Hello and welcome back to the 9th episode of the Couch Crickets. With me in studio once again, my trusty co-host Chris. Chris, how are you handling that final brew?
Well, I don't know if I'm actually ready to talk about it, but maybe it'll do me some good. It's not the subject of this podcast, but we had the cricket and the tennis going at the same time yesterday. So I think in shock from both results. The cricket, was it the best final ever?
Yes.
Was it the best cricket game, ODI cricket game ever? Big question.
Call. Just to mention, we had the tennis going. My favourite Fed, unfortunately, not pulling it through. But we also had some netball going, South Africa beating Jamaica, and we had some Formula One. I mean, it's times like these where I wish I could time travel a bit, just to sort of experience them all in first hand and watch them all live. But unfortunately, this Sunday we had to settle for watching the cricket and the tennis simultaneously. And I must be honest, it was a bit of a sensory overload, Drew.
Yeah, for those considering replicating this, I don't recommend it. It's actually a bit much watching two games at once, especially when they're both so intense. So rather watch highlights on one.
Or practice some self-discipline and watch the one live and keep yourself removed from all social media, and then watch the next one sort of recorded an hour or two delayed. But watching them simultaneously is horrible, actually, because you have no moments of sort of rest, because the bowler's running in, you're focusing on what's happening, he bowls the ball, something happens. Now while they're sort of resetting for the next ball, you focus your attention to the next tennis point, and when that point's over, you look back for it's a disaster. Sensory overload. Anyway, let's move on to the cricket. Okay, best World Cup final ever, undoubtedly.
Easy game.
Best ODI game ever?
Yeah, we had this discussion. Everyone must just remember the 4-3-8 game.
But you could argue that this one might be a better game overall, because it wasn't so one-sided in terms of bat versus ball.
True. Both the nail-biters, the 4-3-8 game did not go to a tie and a super over.
And a tie in the super over.
Yeah. And lacked the controversy that this game is full of.
So before we get into all the sort of ties and super overs and controversies, for those who might be living underneath a stone, let's just recap what happened. New Zealand won the toss. They chose to bat. A brave move, and in retrospect, probably the right one. Ended with 241 for 8. Okay. One of their best starts in terms of opening partnerships for the tournament. Martin Guptill getting 19 runs, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering what he's been doing in the tournament, that is actually quite a lot for. Anyway, Nichols, we were tuning him for not scoring runs, and in the end, sort of top scoring for New Zealand with 55 of 77.
Yeah, just to bounce back to the toss, with the start was actually delayed because of rain overnight, and that would have been something that Kane Williamson would have considered. Maybe the ball would go early, but he said, as is sort of folk knowledge, that runs on the board in the final place pressure on the other team, and that proved to be the case. I mean, you can't fault him for that. And like you say, Nichols playing a really good innings. Initially, we thought maybe a bit slow, and then when you see the second team bat, then you realize not too slow. Really disappointing for Guptill. He was the top scorer in World Cup 2015, and now can't really string much more than a 20 together.
Yeah,
it's very
I think his average before the final game for the tournament was 20, and he obviously only scored 19 runs, so that not a lot changed in terms of his average. So I think he will be pretty disappointed by that. But in the end, I think, so when I saw the pitch on TV, I got some flashbacks, some Kingsmead Durban flashbacks. It looked like an absolute green mamba. But in the end, there wasn't that much movement, if you ask me. There was a bit. A bit of bounce, a bit of seam movement, and I thought England bowled really well up front, even though they didn't necessarily get the 3 super early wickets like they did against Australia in the semi-final. But needless to say, nonetheless, I felt England bowled really well in the first 10 overs.
Yeah, I agree. And we spoke about it in the game. The one thing that New Zealand do really well is that even guys that aren't in form don't throw away their wickets. So if they come in and they're really not looking good, they still scrap a 20 or a 30 and just contribute to the total, hang around with a guy who is timing it. And in that way, they almost always make a defendable total. Even if they're looking like they're struggling, somehow they get to their 240, their 250, and it's defendable just because of how good their bowlers are. Whereas some other teams, when guys aren't in form, they start feeling the pressure, they take a wild swing at something and get out for 5 and haven't contributed at all.
So in terms of batsmen for New Zealand, as we just mentioned, Guptill got out for 19. Nichols played a really good innings for 55. Williamson got a fighting 30. Taylor got 15. Latham then also got a really nice 47. Neesham got 19, de Grandom got 16, and so forth. So what you hear there is that nobody essentially got out for 3, 5. Everyone contributed towards a relatively decent total, which in my opinion in the end, as I actually said this at the break, I think it's not a bad total, but they're probably 30 runs short. I thought 270 would have been a winning total.
Yeah. I think another interesting thing to note is that there were 30 extras. Now, leg bars you can't do too much about, but 17 wides in a World Cup final.
That's a lot.
That's too much. So, I mean, if you count 30 extras, that's almost the third top score. That's the same amount as Williamson made. So, England contributing to their own suffering there.
So, I mean, all in all, not a bad effort from New Zealand in terms of batting, but also not the best. But I think one of the reasons that the innings played out like it did was England's quality bowling. So let's get into that. And Archer and Wokes opened up the innings and they looked really dangerous. They were nipping it about, really bowling good line and lengths. The commentators mentioned that Archer might have been bowling a bit too short. But, you know, that's sort of his natural length because he's generally sort of a back of the length type of bowler. But, honourable mention for one of the cricketers who, before this tournament, I would have described as a bits and pieces cricketer. Liam Plunkett. What a spell. We'll get into the England batting and the super over and all that just in a minute, but I don't think people realise how crucial that middle over spell by Liam Plunkett was. He ended with 3 for 42 in his 10, but Williamson and Nichols were just starting to push the pace. They were going from overs 10 to 20, they were going at like almost 6 and over. They were really setting it up for a big score, and Plunkett came in and broke the partnership and sort of controlled it. And really, in terms of bowling, that was the most important sort of contribution for England, in my opinion.
Yeah, we spoke before the game and we said Plunkett and Rashid have looked really good throughout the tournament, but we've wondered how much was due to how well they bowled versus the wickets that Wokes and Archer have taken out front.
Yeah, setting up a nice platform for them to contribute.
Yeah, and with Plunkett and Rashid coming in, and Wood coming into the attack in this particular game with 1 wicket down, and Williamson and Nichols actually looking pretty good, it was sort of the big test for them. And Plunkett especially, as you say, stood up, took wickets.
And he passed with flying colours.
Yeah, and Rashid too, I mean, the spinner can travel if it's not turning too much. It didn't have that much turn. There wasn't nothing for him, but he also controlled the pace of the innings, and luckily they do have that extra bowler in Ben Stokes to come and try a few overs, so he didn't have to bowl out, seeing as it wasn't turning.
But anyway, so New Zealand set the 241 for 8, and in went England to bat, and as can be expected, Bolt and Henry bowled stunningly up front. Didn't take such early wickets like they would have wanted, but they kept it real tight. And often when you're pushing to try and get wickets, you tend to sort of overextend and you tend to travel a bit. And I felt that's what Bolt and Henry did really well. They kept it tight. They didn't sort of try and force the issue. And eventually they got the breakthrough. Jason Roy, but Henry got the breakthrough. And then from there on, it was a bit of a sort of, I don't want to say meltdown, but a bit of a meltdown from England.
Yeah, what impressed me a lot was the amount of swing that Trent Bolt got. None of the English bowlers got quite as much swing as him, except for 1 or 2 deliveries from Mark Wood, really full deliveries that swung. But Trent Bolt got some really nice swing early on. Unlucky not to take a wicket
Up front, yeah.
up front. But Joe Root for me was a bit of a problem in the English lineup. Usually he has no problem batting it around a run a ball, picks off the singles, but really struggled to rotate the strike. And that's when we saw a few very strange shots from him just before he actually lost his wicket.
Yeah, wafting at a wide one.
Yeah.
But so what was also quite surprising to me is the shot that Morgan played. There seems to be this aura surrounding him that just bowl him short balls, he's going to get out in some way. And to be honest, he's obliging. I think of the last 4 or 5 games, he's gotten out to a short ball in some way, whether that's trying to hit it over point and getting caught at deep cover, like happened in this game, whether it's sort of top edging it to find leg, or clearly there's something to it. Bowling short to Morgan.
Yeah, it's we've also again discussed this off mic, but it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Maybe you don't actually have a deficiency to the short ball, but someone gets you out with the short ball one time. Next time, you're definitely getting a few short balls, and you think, I don't have a weakness, so let me go after this, and you just miss time 1, you get out, now suddenly it's 2, now everyone's bowling short to you all the time, and the catches are all in position, so the chances of you getting out of that short ball are bigger.
Just increases, yeah. It's like an infinite loop.
Yeah, so I don't know whether he actually has the weakness or whether he's just being bombarded by short bowling, because that is what's happening. But yeah, disappointing for him in a World Cup final. You really want your captain to stand up and lead the team, especially in this challenging chase.
And let's be honest, he played a relatively good innings in the semi-final, and he played that unbelievable innings against Afghanistan where he smashed it all over the park. But besides that, he's been a bit absent in terms of batting in this World Cup.
Honestly, it's very difficult for couch cricketers like us to comment too much on captaincy. Obviously, we can have a look at tactics and interviews and things like that. But if there's someone else who can perform well as a captain, I'm not convinced that Owen Morgan is the best number 4 that England have. He's done very well and they've got the World Cup. Congrats and all that. But moving forward, especially with him likely not being able to compete in the next edition of the World Cup, they may well consider looking for another number 4.
But anyway, so then sort of Stokes and Butler settled the ship. And off mic once again yesterday, it looked like they were cruising. The run rate wasn't getting out of control because it's not a big total. But then Butler got out and then it got interesting. And, I mean, we can't even sort of touch on the drama that happened. But essentially what ended was, it ended in a tie. For those of you that might not have watched, there were a few I don't want to say controversies, more like critical points.
Yeah. I mean, this game was so filled with them, but we're just going to touch on 1 or 2. So to start out, in the 49th over,
Jimmy Neesham was bowling. Yeah.
Jimmy Neesham bowling. Ben Stokes has a huge heave, and it looks for all money like it's going for 6, only to drop safely into the hands of Trent Bolt, who then
takes a step back,
does not have his Peter Tingle go off, and steps on the boundary rope, making it a 6. He looked a little bit casual about it. He just clearly didn't have the awareness of where the rope was, because he had time to throw it back in field.
I think he thought he knew where the rope was, but in actual fact he didn't. And that's very unfortunate, because that would have essentially sealed the game for Australia by that point.
For Australia.
Oh, sorry. For England. By that point they didn't really have any other proper batsmen left, and that would have sealed it for England.
That being said, Trent Boult more than made up for it with his death bowling. I felt he was brilliant at the death, even though he didn't quite pull it off. And then to the last over, Carl walk us through that over.
So they required 15 off the last over. First 2 balls, quality deliveries by Trent Boult, and ended up in dot balls. Obviously, Ben Stokes was on strike, and he didn't want to take a single because at the other end they had a non-batsman. So on the 4th delivery, Trent Boult makes the mistake of dropping one in the arc, and if it's in the arc, it's out the park. So it went for 6, so they required 9 of 3. Ben Stokes then hit the next delivery to sort of a deep mid-wicket, and they obviously scurried for 2 to try and get him back onto strike. And the fielder threw the ball back into the keeper's end, and Ben Stokes, while he was running, dived to make his ground, and with his outreached bat, deflected the ball towards the boundary. And unfortunately, it was definitely not intentional. I mean, if he had done that intentionally, that would have been
Obstructing the field. And
obstructing the field. But, I mean, if you had managed to do that intentionally, it would have been unbelievable. But, I mean, it's so ridiculous that there's no way you could have done that intentionally. Even though I'm not a fan of him. Like, even me, I can't blame him for that. Yeah. So the ball went for 4. And they got a 6. So it's the 2 that they ran plus the 4 overthrows. So now, okay, so we'll get back to that in a moment. Yeah. So they got the 6. Suddenly they required 3 of 2. And
they only managed the single.
They only managed
2 singles.
2 singles. With 2 runouts obviously portraying. And the game was drawn. The game then moved on to a super over, which Trent Boult once again bowled for England, for New Zealand, and England actually sent in Ben Stokes and Butler to bat, and they managed to get 15 off the over.
Yeah, I thought they did really well.
Yeah, I really thought they did well as well. Then when New Zealand batted their super over, they sent in, interestingly enough, Jimmy Neesham and Martin Guptill, and Jimmy Neesham actually managed to get 13 runs of the first 5 balls by himself.
Yeah.
And then Martin Guptill faced the last ball, and he only managed 1 before being run out for the second, meaning that the super over was tied as well. Now, for those of you that don't know, England then won the trophy because they hit the most amount of boundaries during their innings, and the super over included.
Yeah, so all the controversial things to unpack. Let's start with that last ruling. Immediately when we heard that was the rule, we thought, well, that's a random rule. We think that, this is our opinion, everyone's welcome to chime in the comments and so on, that placing on the league list, so on the log, is probably a better method.
Or result in the pool game, because it's a round robin format, so everyone played everyone.
Yeah, so result in the pool game between the 2 teams. Now, both of those options would have led to England winning anyway. England ended above New Zealand in the standings, and they beat New Zealand. So it wouldn't have made a difference. But the concept we feel is flawed. It just favours.
Well, it's not about favouring batsmen. What it's about is what I have a problem with the rule is the fact that it's favouring different styles of cricket. Now you're saying, okay, well, we're favouring big hitters. Now, some people don't have the genetic makeup to be big hitters, and they make up for that by playing a smarter game, an accumulating game, and they still score a hell of a lot. Man of the tournament, Kane Williamson. I mean, I promise you, he didn't hit the most boundaries, but so anyway, even though in this case it wouldn't have made a difference, I really, because all other ways of determining who should be the winner, England would have won anyway. I really feel that that's a horrible rule and they should change it.
Yeah, no, the thing is, someone sat in a room somewhere and made up that rule thinking, there is no way this is ever going to happen. But now, unfortunately, they've been exposed for not the best decision or the best. I don't think it's the best thought out method. Maybe there's a very good reason for it, but we can't see it at the moment. And then the the second big controversy
was the Ben Stokes deflection overthrow things. So, as we stated, he hit it to the boundary, came back for the second, the ball ricocheted off his bat, and it went for 4, so they got 6. Now, today, ex-umpire Simon Toffel, really a quality umpire on his day. I think he's retired now, but he's on the, if I'm not mistaken, he's on the committee of umpires sort of guarding the rule book. And he came out and said that the decision to award England 6 runs was wrong. They should have been awarded 5. Due to the fact that I think it's law 19.3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I'm quoting this from memory, but anyway, what it essentially says is that, Chris, do you have that? Can you read this for us?
Yeah, so
okay,
law 19.8 pertaining to overthrow or willful act of fielder says, if the boundary results from an overthrow or from the willful act of a fielder, the runs scored shall be any runs for penalties awarded to either side and the allowance for the boundary, and the runs completed by the batsman, together with the run in progress, here's the crucial part, if they had already crossed at the instant of the throw or act.
Yes.
So, what that means is, Ben Stokes definitely deserves the 4 runs for the ball going to the boundary. Great.
And he definitely deserves the 1 he completed
but
before the fielder threw the ball from the boundary.
The golden question is, did they cross before Guptill released the ball from the boundary?
And the answer is no.
No.
They did not. So
replays show they did not. So by the laws
of the game, they should have gotten 5. Now, would that have changed the outcome? Maybe. But you have to give the batsman the benefit of the doubt, saying that if they knew they had to get more with the next couple of balls, you would have played a different shot, So you can't say, oh, that's why New Zealand lost the game. But
yep. But another factor is that the batsman should have been forced to change ends. So Adil Rashid would have been on strike instead of Ben Stokes.
And that would have, made the chances of sort of hitting a boundary or, getting a 2 or 3 or whatever a lot less. So,
yeah,
that's super unlucky.
That's a tough break for New Zealand. That being said, that is part of the laws of the game. So, part of the laws of the game is that the umpire's call on the field stands. You don't get to argue with the umpire's call. Obviously, umpire Domesina made a mistake.
One of the many he's made this tournament.
But that is a pretty tough call to make. If he had have picked up on that in the moment, he would have been exalted as an amazing umpire, because I don't know how many people actually know that rule.
No, sure. But the thing is, my sentiment is, yes, okay, it's part of the game, whatever, we move on. But my sentiment is just, we're in a World Cup final. It's, it's a tournament played once every 4 years. It's the final. I feel, refer it. It sounds, or just sort of hang on a moment. I mean, we've been waiting 4 years and 7 weeks of cricket for this over. Sort of hold the phone, get on your walkie-talkie, ask the match referee, what's up? I mean, I promise you,
at
somebody
that moment, there was no reason to refer. What were you going to refer? In my head, it was like, oh, they completed 2 and the ball went for 4, so it's 6.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, he's the elite of the elite umpires. He should be aware of the fact that there is such a rule. I can forgive him for saying, oh, I'm not sure, let's check. And I know you can't check every single sort of small nitty-gritty, otherwise the game will, become way too slow. But in a World Cup final, I feel... Yeah, but anyway, I've said I've said my piece.
So, after a tied actual game and a tied super over, England won the World Cup. I want to focus on the fact that England did not win the World Cup final. The World Cup final was a tie.
Yeah.
The World Cup was won by England. And congratulations to them. Again, off camera we discussed that, off mic, we discussed that as much as we would have liked to see New Zealand win, and as much as they probably deserved it as much as England, England have been the best team in the world for the last 4 years.
For the biggest part.
For the biggest part of the last 4 years, ending up on top of the ODI rankings, coming into tournament as favourites, facing a little bit of adversity with a few games that they shouldn't have lost, and then winning some crunch games. And as much as you want to say they came out on top in this game, they didn't really. They tied this game. But I feel that they are deserved World Cup winners as much as they might not deserve to win the final.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. As much as it pains me to say, because I'm quite anti-England, as everyone should know by now. Your point is valid, and I do agree with you. And usually, and that was one of my issues with New Zealand beating India in the semi-final. I felt that, okay, fine, New Zealand played better than England and India in one game now. Now they're going to get a shot at the World Cup, where India's, over the past 4 years, they've been a much better team. They've been playing a much higher level of cricket, and, they deserve to be in the final. So by that sentiment, congratulations to England. Well done. And that's, it's a lot, but that's how it is now. And I suppose we gotta move forward.
Quick fire questions, Carl. Your comments on Ben Stokes, man of the match for the final. How do you feel about that? Do you think he deserves it? Was there someone else you would have picked for that? I know you're not a huge fan, but you can't argue with the class of his innings.
No, I'd probably pick Ben Stokes as well. He played a classy 84. He also batted in the super over. He came in during a time where his team was in quite some trouble, and if they lost Ben Stokes early, they were gone for all money.
Yeah.
So quality performance from his side, and the English media and the whole world has been building Ben Stokes up. He's the best all-rounder ever. He's going to be, Ian Botham 2.0. And up until relatively recently, in my opinion, he hasn't been living up to that. And I think and I hope that this World Cup can be the sort of catalyst to him sort of becoming the superstar cricketer on field, and leave all his off-field issues behind and sort of deliver to his potential, because that'll be great for the game of cricket.
Well, I must say, I'm actually a fan, off-field issues aside. I'm a bit disappointed that he hasn't had more of a chance with the ball. I know he can be expensive at times, but he's a real wicket taker. That being said, his average for the World Cup is 66 with the bat. That is a real classy number 5.
Yeah.
He's right up there in the top 10 of the averages. Let's move on. Next question. Kane Williamson, man of the tournament. How are you feeling about that?
That's interesting. I think they probably gave it to him in the end because of the importance of the innings that he plays. He really played some nuggety innings where his team's fate relied on his innings. If you just take on pure run scoring ability, you probably should have given it to Rohit Sharma because he was smashing it out the park. But they probably gave it to Kane because, when times were tough for New Zealand, Kane delivered.
Yeah, I must say, Rohit Sharma came to mind immediately. The other one who came to mind immediately was Mitchell Starc.
Yeah, most wickets by a bowler in a World Cup ever.
Yeah, but Mitchell Starc didn't perform in some of the crucial games where they lost to South Africa, lost to England.
Yeah.
And I know it's not a good reason not to pick him, but he was man of the tournament last time. So maybe time for someone else. Rohit Sharma, there should be a way to quantify how valuable runs are. And Kane Williamson seems to make extremely valuable runs, even though they're not as many as other people always. He's, as much as Rohit Sharma is an opener, Kane Williamson has basically opened the batting for New Zealand because of their struggling openers. And he's got an average of 82 for the tournament, which is amazing. So yeah, I think he's full value there. Although some others can probably feel a little bit hard done by.
But, let's wrap it up. All in all, an unbelievable tournament. Started off being hampered a bit by rain. In the end, there was some things, but it's all part of the game. And especially towards the end of the tournament, the semi-final got influenced a bit, but most games got played, and we got some exciting cricket, and we once again saw that one-day cricket is not dead.
No, one-day cricket can build suspense like a T20 doesn't quite seem to be able to. As much as
the
it is
ebb
exciting.
and flow you get in a one-day game, because there's enough time for a team to, rattle another team up front, and then suddenly a couple of wickets fall, and you've got all these overs to bat through, and the ebbs and flow you get is just unbelievable. One-day cricket is not dead. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah. No, and the character that players have to show in those huge pressure moments when you are 50 for 4 or 50 for 5 and you have to rebuild an innings, the qualities that batsmen have to show in those times, or that bowlers have to show when they're getting hit all over the park. Just it's a really good display for the game. Some controversies. Possibly, we've been talking about a change in the DRS system where we've seen teams lose their review and then get bad decisions that they are unable to turn over. Possibly something to look at in the future of the one-day game.
Just in the final, Ross Taylor got sticked LBW and it wasn't out and he couldn't review it because the review was used earlier.
So that's an area that the ICC can consider looking at. And
especially, in my opinion, for knockout games where it's so much on the line.
Yeah, but I really like the format of this World Cup tournament. I hope they keep it. There may be something to say for changing the format of the knockout stage to benefit teams who perform consistently through the league stage. So maybe having the top team goes straight
to the final, like they do in the IPL. Yeah.
Something along those lines, an IPL-like scenario. But yeah, to avoid scenarios like India being punished for 45 minutes of bad cricket. That being said, if you get then the wrong games rained out or the right games rained out, maybe you end up higher on the table than you should be. So difficult to judge that one.
But all in all, unbelievable. I'm so sad that it's over. I'm so sad that it's over. But anyway, I think that's about it for us, for this World Cup. So for everyone who's been listening, thank you very much for joining our World Cup series. I think we'll be back for the Ashes, which starts in about 3 weeks. I think we might take a bit of a week or two break to try and figure out our logistics, as my co-host Chris is going across the ocean.
Yeah.
But I will most likely be back for the Ashes. So for at least for now, for the World Cup series, thanks for joining us on the couch.
Yeah, goodbye and keep well.